Hi, my name is Megan Edwards of Focus Communications, and today we're getting the first update of the year from SK Mining, which trades on the Toronto Venture Stock Exchange under the symbol ESK. Joining me is SK's Vice President of Exploration, John DeDecker. John, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Megan. Thanks for having me back again, and looking forward to talking about our latest press release.
So yesterday, SK confirmed a new precious metal-rich VMS system at Scarlet Knob-Tarn Lake. Could you please run us through this region of the project and the results from the campaign?
Certainly. Before I do that, I just want to note we have a disclaimer. We will be talking about forward-looking statements today, and please do your own due diligence with investing. This slide right here is kind of hitting over some of the high points from the press release. In particular, we're talking about Tarn Lake and Scarlet Knob, which is 800 meters to the east of Tarn Lake. Over at Scarlet Knob, we had an extensive field mapping and rock chip sampling program, which returned a really high-grade sample from a semi-massive sulfide outcrop. That would be 56.9 grams per ton gold and 154 grams per ton silver. So it's certainly confirming that this system is quite well mineralized over at Scarlet Knob. There are additional samples that we have in the table in the press release that are gold and silver bearing as well. We also have some historic or legacy rock chip sampling data from this area that shows about 500 meters to the north of this really high grade sample we collected, that there's another sample at 56.6 grams per ton gold, which is very comparable to what we found this year. So it's showing that there is the potential for a high grade sulfide mineralization over a large strike length at Scarlet Knob. Now jumping to the other side of the glacier, which I'll show some figures here shortly, we were drilling over at Tarn Lake, where we also had some good rock chip sample results coming in at 9.2 grams per ton gold and 9.3 grams per ton silver. One of the most interesting things about both of these targets is the fact that the mineralization at these goes right up to the margin of Bruce Glacier, which suggests that maybe the mineralization continues underneath Bruce Glacier. So we started drilling at Tarn Lake near the end of the season, and we were able to complete 10 drill holes, of which the results presented in this press release go over the first tranche of drill results that we have back from Tarn Lake. And it again shows that we do have gold and silver mineralization over here, including 4.1 grams per ton gold and 98 grams per ton silver over 5.43 meters. And that's all within a much larger interval of about 41.41 meters of gold and silver mineralization. And I'll talk about that here in more detail shortly. But certainly they're very exciting targets, and they're definitely going to be a focus of ours going forward. So just showing the geologic map of the area, I'd like to turn on the cursor here and note that we have Eskay Creek Mine would be up here at the nose of the Eskay Incline, hosted by Upper Hazelton Group rocks, particularly the Eskay Rhyolite. And that's a trend on the Eskay Incline that continues all the way down through Sib and Lulu. While what we found and confirmed this year is that there is a parallel trend to that that we're calling the Scarlet Tarn trend over here, going from Scarlet Ridge up here in the north all the way down through Scarlet Knob, Tarn Lake, and then there's a cluster of legacy rock chip samples that I'll discuss later that's also gold and silver bearing. But the really critical thing is that all of this mineralization is hosted in Upper Hazelton Group rocks, particularly at Tarn Lake and Scarlet Knob. We've got Eskay Rhyolite hosting the mineralization. So we're dealing with the same horizon that we have at Eskay Creek. It's very important to point out that in addition to this rhyolite, we have abundant sedimentary rock horizons, which is indicating that we are very close or proximal to a paleo seafloor position where this VMS mineralization would form. So we're in the right area to find potentially a major VMS deposit at the Scarlet Tarn Trend.
Now, I know the company had an extensive ground program last year covering a fair amount of target areas. Could you discuss how you were able to progress this target all the way to discovery in such a short period of time?
Yes, so this figure right here, zooming in on, we have Tarn Lake over to the left side of this figure right here, and Scarlet Knob over here. We got boots on the ground this year. We have a team of mapping geologists led by Dr. Ben Fryman, one of my colleagues at the Colorado School of Mines. And then we have our team of prospectors, which comprise myself and Dr. Samuel Pierre, who is a VMS expert, also a PhD graduate from Colorado School of Mines. And we got out and really focused on mapping the lithologies, mapping the structural geology, identifying controls on sulfide mineralization, and collecting rock chip samples for assay. It's very important that everybody realizes that, this is a large area. There's been very kind of cursory mapping done in the past, and it was pretty evident in 2021 that there were some serious issues with the quality of the maps in this area. So we went out, took a fresh look at these rocks, and we were able to show for the first time that we're dealing with Eskay Rhyolite over here. So that was the first big discovery, is that we're dealing with Upper Hazelton Group Eskay Rhyolite, which was something that was not really understood previously. So we know we're in the right area. And then the next thing we realize is that there's quite a bit of sulfide mineralization at both of these targets. And as we mentioned in the press release and a few other releases over the past year, this sulfide mineralization is controlled by east-west trending andesite dikes. And that holds true for not only Tarn Lake and Scarlet Knob, but Scarlet Valley and Scarlet Ridge proceeding north. There's just a series of all of these east-west trending andesite dikes that we're interpreting as being placed along synvolcanic fault structures. These would be the same structures that fed VMS hydrothermal fluids to the seafloor and created VMS mineralization. And that's certainly what we have found. And, as we've seen at TV and Jeff, there are variable degrees of gold and silver concentration with this sulfide mineralization. So, what we're finding is we've got a lot of sulfide mineralization. Now we're vectoring in towards which sulfide bearing zones are gold and silver bearing as well. It's certainly looking like out of the Scarlet Tarn trend that Tarn Lake and Scarlet Knob are the two best zones that we've identified so far this year, and they're certainly going to warrant more work going forward. So it's really interesting. As I said, a lot of the sulfide mineralization that we found in the golden bearing mineralization occurs very close to the margins of the glacier. Here's where our 56.9 gram per ton sample is, and then you see a slew of other samples over here on the west side of the glacier. So we've been able to show is this mineralization goes right up to the margin of the glacier. That's another thing to point out, that glaciers melt. They're receding right now. And, back 30 years ago when previous sampling was done, the glacier margin was up about in this area. So, a lot of the old samples are up here showing very high grade mineralization, and our new samples are down in this area where the glaciers receded over the past 30 years, showing that this trend of mineralization is continuing and may possibly continue underneath the glacier and on to the other side of Bruce Glacier. So that's something that's going to be a big focus of next year's program, is actually trying to figure out, do these things connect? Because right now we have a series of shallow drill holes over here, the first drill holes in this area, and we don't have anything over here. So there's a lot more exploration work to do in this area.
And hitting mineralization on such early drill holes is a great success for the company. Can you discuss what's next here, and will this be a focus for Eskay in the upcoming season?
Yeah, well, hitting this type of mineralization on the first few drill holes up here, I think, is a big success. You know, a lot of that's because of the fantastic team that we've been able to put together. Our prospecting and mapping teams have done a phenomenal job getting out there. We brought the handheld XRF into the field. That's actually giving us a much better idea of the Pathfinder element concentrations within these rocks, and then being able to identify our stratigraphic position and where the best feeder zone type sulfide mineralization is occurring, gave us a good idea of where to put drill holes. Again, the XRF cannot identify gold, unfortunately, so we're kind of handicapped with that. But you know, at some point we have to put a drill hole in the ground and see what we get. And starting here at Tarn Lake, we had very encouraging first results. You know, we have Tarn TN 22, 10, and 12 right here. That would be these two holes in this cross-section view on the bottom, map views on the top. And what we've been able to show, at a minimum, there is a high-grade core to this that's about 25 meters or so between these two holes. And then going on the map view to the south towards Tarn 6, we're talking about a distance of about 80 meters along strike. And we're awaiting pending results for some other drill holes drilled between these. But what I can say is we definitely encountered sulfide mineralization comparable to what we saw, particularly in Tarn 10 and 12, and some of these other holes here. So this, combined with the surrounding rock chip sample results, you know, we've got a really good rock chip results in this area. And then there's some legacy sampling a little bit closer to the glacier as well, really showing that it appears we've got a large zone of mineralization right here, which is very encouraging to hit gold and silver on the first few drill holes. And again, you know, a lot of what we're seeing here and all these yellows is anomalous mineralization, but I find that very encouraging, and I could talk about that here on the next slide, where we've got examples of our mineralization. This is Tarn 2210, where we've got our high-grade intercept would be this box over here. On the left side, we've got abundant semi-massive to massive sulfide over here. This is all replacement style sulfide. So this is actually where the hydrothermal alteration is so intense that the rhyolite's basically being eaten up and corroded by hydrothermal fluids and replaced by semi-massive to massive sulfide. And this figure right here is a very good example of that, where you see these clasts of these fragments of rhyolite that have these really kind of undulose, embayed, corroded looking margins to them. That is a telltale sign of replacement style sulfide mineralization. And one of the big questions of the season, and I'd mentioned this previously in other interviews, is we have a lot of this disseminated sulfide mineralization that's in this bottom slide right here, or bottom photo. And what we see is stockwork sulfide and abundant vesicles or bubbles basically in the lava as it cools, forms these bubbles. We have sulfides filling those, as well as what we call phenocrysts. They're crystals in the magma that have been eaten up by hydrothermal alteration, and those are also replaced by sulfide. The big question of the season was, does this type of disseminated sulfide mineralization bear gold and silver? Well, assay results say yes, they do. As a matter of fact, all of the sulfide we found at Tarn Lake so far is gold and silver bearing. Now it's just a matter of vectoring towards the areas that have the most intense sulfide replacement. And, I think that that's a very encouraging sign that we're dealing with something where all of the sulfides precious metal bearing, which is something that is not true, for instance, at Jeff, where, for our last release, we've got zones of base metal mineralization, but those don't necessarily correlate with the gold and silver mineralization. Over here at Tarn Lake, what we're finding is this much more widespread and extensive precious metal mineralization over here at Tarn Lake. It appears to be the core of a larger VMS system on the whole Tarn Lake trend. So just looking at the rock chip samples, again, we're dealing with a very extensive zone of sulfide mineralization, which is indicated by these Gaussons, or all this yellow and orange and red oxidized rhyolite right here is just riddled with sulfide. As you can see with the drill holes, this disseminated sulfide mineralization is ubiquitous. It's everywhere throughout these rocks. And there is quite a bit of outcropping, massive to semi-massive sulfide mineralization. A lot of our drill holes were coming up through this sort of area up here. There is a fault zone down here that our drill holes were not, or our drills were not able to penetrate through. However, our field work shows there is additional rhyolite and semi-massive sulfide mineralization down here that we look forward to actually placing some drill pads on the other side of this fault zone and hopefully be able to start drilling through that and under the glacier to determine how far this mineralization extends to the east. But what we see with our high-grade samples here is that we've got abundant sulfide replacement here with this sample right here and this sample right here to the right, both being hosted by rhyolite, both exhibiting intense semi-massive sulfide replacement, and they're both polymetallic with quite a bit of arsenopyrite, sphalerite, and galena. So in addition to the precious metal sulfides, we're dealing with base metal sulfides at the horizon that Eskay Creek is located at. I would say out of anything we've drilled on the property so far, these rocks are the ones that are the most like the historic Eskay Creek mine. Because we got to remember, TV and Jeff's in the lower Hazelton group. The mineralization is probably about 20 million years older than Eskay Creek. What we're dealing with here at Tarn Lake and Scarlet Knob is most likely coeval with mineralization at Eskay Creek, which is very exciting and opens the door to a lot of possibilities for exploration up here in this area.
And you've got these two target areas. What's the distance between them, and are you interpreting them as individual systems?
So I would say the question's still out on whether these are individual systems or not. I would say probably not. They're probably all one system. But we've got Tarn Lake over here. You can see Dr. Pierre over here for scale over at Tarn Lake, examining some of the sulfide mineralization at Tarn Lake. And then it's about 850 meters due east across Bruce Glacier where we get to Scarlet Knob. And we have the exact location for our 56.9 gram per ton gold, 154 gram per ton silver sample over here. I'd also note that other high-grade sample, the historic rock chip sample, is coming from somewhere in this area. You can see Gausson extending the entire length of this area, which is about 500 meters, as we note within the press release. And then going over towards Scarlet Valley, again, an extensive zone of sulfide mineralization here. There's about 800 meters separating Scarlet Knob from Scarlet Valley. A lot of this is covered with glacial till, so there is no exposure of outcrop on the surface here, so we don't know that mineralization continues. However, there are some historic drill holes from what was called the AP zone running through here that did intercept up to 3.8 grams per ton gold in drill core, kind of off to the east of this trend, and I would say away from most of the intense sulfide mineralization we identified was in this area, which was previously covered by the glacier. So there is quite a big possibility that this is actually connected. I would say for sure Tarn Lake and Scarlet Knob have the best possibility, particularly given that these east-west trending andesite dikes control where the mineralization was in place. These are the synvolcanic structures. So, that Tarn Lake and Scarlet Knob are on that east-west line from each other, bodes well for the system being connected. Again, we're going to need to drill underneath the glacier and perhaps on top of this glacier to determine whether that's the case. And then there's going to be more field work going on to see just how connected Scarlet Valley and Scarlet Knob are to each other.
Before we wrap things up, is there anything else you'd like to cover?
Yeah, I would like to discuss our drilling at Scarlet Valley and Scarlet Knob. Again, these were maiden drill programs. We're just trying to wrap our heads around what's going on out here. And in addition to our extensive mapping and surface sampling program, we did maiden drill program. And this really helps us not only identify mineralization in the subsurface, which is our primary goal, but we're also able to get a better idea of what's going on three-dimensionally with the geology. How are things dipping in the subsurface? Where's the hydrothermal alteration? This is all key pieces of information we need to vector towards mineralization. So you kind of have to cast a big net, see what you catch, and then you can start to zero in on where the best zones are. So it appears that as you work your way northwards of Tarn Lake, that while we still have intense sulfide mineralization, the precious metal mineralization seems to fade out a bit. There's quite a bit of anomalous silver and gold that we found in rock chip samples here. Stuff that's around a gram per ton gold and 100 to several hundred tons gram per ton silver within rock chip samples up here. And then going forward towards the drill core that we have here, these are the assay results. We intercepted quite a bit of sulfide mineralization, but what we found is that there are zones of barren sulfide and there are zones of precious metal bearing sulfide. The rocks here at Scarlet Valley are not as intensely hydrothermally altered as they are at Tarn Lake, which indicates we are becoming more distal from the core of the hydrothermal system. However, we still have plus 1 gram per ton gold equivalent and gold results here, as well as some large zones of anomalous sulfide and gold and silver bearing mineralization here. Again, we're interpreting this combined with the hydrothermal alteration intensity to indicate that we are moving further away from the core of a VMS system that is most likely centered around Tarn Lake and Scarlet Knob, where we have much more robust gold and silver results and much more intense, extremely intense hydrothermal alteration. And this trend holds going forward further to the north at Scarlet Ridge, where it's really just at the very top of the drill hole that we intercepted gold and silver results, and then we got into some non-gold and silver bearing sulfide mineralization here. And again, the hydrothermal alteration is even weaker at Scarlet Ridge than it is at Scarlet Valley. Again, supporting our interpretation that this VMS system is really centered around Tarn Lake and Scarlet Knob. So, it's really a combination of exploratory drill holes, surface sampling, prospecting, and mapping combined as a team effort that really looked at this large trend between Scarlet Valley and Tarn Lake, and we were able to, within the course of a season, vector towards where we felt the best gold and silver mineralization would be. And sure enough, that's at Tarn Lake, which is why we drilled more holes at Tarn Lake than we drilled elsewhere on this trend. And that's not to say that the trend continues. Again, it's a very large, very rugged area with a limited time frame to work because of the weather. But going from Tarn Lake, which again coincides with one of these moderate SkyTim anomalies, just like at TV and Jeff. So, big takeaway, SkyTim actually seems to work for defining these zones of mineralization. But we did a VTIM. It's a more of a lower resolution airborne conductivity survey in 2018. And there is a large conductive anomaly down here that corresponds with a trend of legacy rock chip samples that are also gold and silver bearing. We were able to get some boots on the ground at the northern part of this area this year. However, moving forward into 2023, we will expand our focus on Tarn Lake further to the southwest, really trying to show that we've got, quite a large trend of VMS precious metal bearing mineralization that's actually rivaling the trend over here on the Eskay incline going up to Eskay Creek. So, the big takeaway is we've got two parallel trends of VMS mineralization. Obviously, we've got TV and Jeff North. We have the SIB and Lulu and Hexagon Mercury trend, which we will begin exploring more thoroughly coming up in 2023. And then looking further at this VTIM anomaly down here southwest of Tarn Lake is very encouraging. And then obviously, there's a lot more work to do in this area, which we're going to be doing a major sample sampling program is what I would like to do, where we get, these 16-inch diamond rock saws out and we cut channels within the rock, and we can get more continuous sampling over tens of meters along these mineralized zones and get a more representative idea of what we expect to find in drill core based on channel sampling on the surface, which is vastly cheaper than drilling and gives us more comparative with drill core. So we're certainly going to be doing that, and we're also looking forward to resuming drilling out in this area and really determining whether these systems connect underneath Bruce Glacier or not. So that's a big part of what we're looking forward to in 2023.
Thank you so much, John. We really appreciate you coming on today, and we'll be sure to have you on again soon.
All right. Thanks a lot, Megan.